Good afternoon. Welcome all of you to come back to the PM section. First of all, the speaker is from my side. Yeah, she is Grace Cheung. She is the head of public engagement and sustainability of Cathay Pacific. I think everyone knows that Cathay Pacific was in a very difficult position nowadays. But anyway, we thank you the time from Grace to share with his story to us. Grace look after corporate social responsibility and sustainable development at the airline group. She has experience working in the field of marketing, communication, and is keen to apply her storytelling skill to build up public awareness. Then Grace, which story are you going to share with us today?
Yeah, certainly about our SDG journey. So maybe I'll move over to kickstart my presentation.
Your show time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Grace. As Phyllis has already introduced myself, very happy to be with you today to share with you our experience in integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into our sustainability and community engagement strategy and practice at Cathay Pacific. So before we start, actually, I would like to start with the end. What do I mean by that? Here on the screen, you see the 6 SDGs that you have found in our latest 2019 Sustainable Development Report for Cathay Pacific, detailing how we have incorporated these elements into the various aspects of our strategy and operations. And what I want to share with you today is how did we get here from the 17 SDGs down to the 6 that you have just saw? And also, what do they mean to us? What do we mean by integrating them into our business? And finally, what we have learned along the way. Hopefully, there are some tips that you would find useful as you start to embark on your own SDG journey. So let me start with the first part. How did we get here? Of course, like everyone, here, we will start from the full list of the 17 SDG. And I think I won't repeat the very good session that Tony delivered this morning of reporting SDG, how we should start from prioritizing and picking the right ones for the organization. Actually, it's a very similar approach that we have taken at Cathay Pacific. Behind each of these 17 colorful icons, we have dug down to each of their sub-level, the targets and the indicators. What we found is that they have given us some extra level of context and angles to consider when we need to integrate SDGs in our operations. For example, for SDG number 8, promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth through and productive employment and decent work for all, there is a sub-target underneath there, which state that by 2030, the policymakers should sort of like devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. This one is actually quite relevant for an international airline like Cathay Pacific. By identifying these sub-level targets, it helps us to look at the next level of opportunities, which can help us build the SDG into our overall direction and help us to build a business case around it. So we repeat the same approach pretty much for all the 17 SDGs, looking at each of them at the more detailed level, try to identify what are relevant to our operations and also what may be needed to be addressed most from the context of where we operate. But that's not enough, because what's important is we need to find out what is most relevant for us to be adopted in our organization. So we do that by looking at really who we are in terms of our brand, our people, our identity, and what we do as a business. I think it's really a similar approach as what Tony mentioned this morning on how to report SDGs, that we are coming in from 2 distinct entry points to identify the priority SDGs. One from the outside environment, and the other side is from the organization itself to identify where we could make the most impact. So that brings us to part 2 of my presentation, which is what does it mean to integrate SDGs in our own strategy and also in terms of what we do in part of our organization? We start that off with who we are. So what you see here is a snapshot of the people making up Cathay Pacific at the end of 2019. Globally, we employ over 34,000 people, and of which 80% of them are based in Hong Kong, making us one of the biggest employer here in Hong Kong. And we have slightly more female colleagues than male colleagues overall. But as you move up the corporate ladder, you would see that percentage gradually drop of female representation. Up to the board level, we have 19% of our board member is female. So you can see sort of like from that, we then launch into two of the SDGs that we feel that we could play a role in making changes in the society, both internally with our people and externally towards the community we serve. So let me start with SDG 5 with gender equality. For the gender equality aspect, we have approached it from multiple angles, especially internally with our people. To start off with some specific targets in improving the percentage or the mix of gender equality, both in our pilot recruitment and also we are looking at internal targets for increasing female in the management or even the board level. Besides setting specific target, we've established various advisory groups. They take an active role in forming policies and making recommendations to the company in implementing extra measures and policies that could help make gender equality a reality at Cathay. There are also numerous network and male allies program and networking lunches, workshops, together with training. Those are the opportunities for our people to gain knowledge, network, and experience so that together we can make gender equality a reality within the company. I think it is important for us to have this multi-pronged approach, covering both the top-down aspect with specific targets, commitments, and the resources from the company, and the bottom-up approach to engage our people, to equip them with confidence and knowledge to build an environment of gender equality. And that's not all that is. And we didn't stop there with our own people. By partnering with Women's Foundation Hong Kong and also the Girl Scout, we have also reached out to the community, especially around the stereotype of sort of like that is mostly just boys to do STEM work. That's science, technology, engineering, and maths. So we work with both organizations to arrange visits and mentorship, so to show the girls that they also have equal opportunities and a bright future in STEM work when they grow up, and maybe to join us too in future. Besides gender equality, on the people front, we have also put a significant focus in this area. As mentioned earlier, we are one of the biggest employer in Hong Kong, and the safety of our people, both from occupational perspective and also operating safely as an airline, is the highest priority of the whole company. But besides that, also employee overall welfare, well-being, to the holistic employee experience is also our focus. We believe that only happy employees can bring about happy customers, and we devote the same care and attention to redesign our employee experience as we do for our customers. Besides that, recognition and reward is also very important to build the right culture in the company. Considering that we have a lot of our workforce has relatively long tenure with the company, we have the long service awards every year, celebrating colleagues who have been with us for over 10, 15, 20 years, or even some over 40 years in certain cases. For those colleagues coming from some overseas office, there is no retirement age restriction. But besides that, there are other other recognition program recognizing the work well done and exceptional service standards. And besides recognition and reward, attracting and developing talents is also very important to us. Specifically around local opportunities, we have set the target to recruit local pilot by up to 50% in the next few years. Considering that there is no local Air Force bases or many airlines to train pilots, this is a huge undertaking for Cathay and a commitment to the further developing the aviation industry in Hong Kong. There are also other local employment opportunities that are role-specific career programs for young people to apply, ranging from the general management trainee program to technical experts in the IT or engineering field, and to our pilots and customer service professionals, both serving in the air and on the ground. Through these wide-ranging opportunities and the economic benefits a home-based carrier can contribute, Cathay Pacific is fully aware of our responsibility in delivering the SDGs to Hong Kong, our home, and maybe to a lesser extent around the world, also to all the places we fly. And moving on to community, this is another focus area for us in bringing about decent work and economic growth for the community we serve. What you see on screen are the 4 pillars that we try to focus our effort in. Because there are so many good causes that we feel that the society may need, but then after all, with just one single company, we cannot do them all. It's for us important to zoom in and to focus on those aspects we feel most relevant to our operations and that we can make the most impact by delivering and working on them. For that, I would show you the programs that we have delivered last year in delivering these community pillars that we hope to make a positive impact. The first one is I Can Fly. It's a program for secondary school students in Hong Kong. We took them in for a mentorship and training program for half a year. They got the experience to learn different things about aviation and to learn about different ways to tackle social issues. Afterwards, some of the students even get the chance to go to Australia in our flight training school to meet with our cadet pilots there and try their hands at flying some of the training aircraft. This program is really for training and developing our future aviation leaders who are not only interested in aviation itself, but also know and feel the need to do the right thing for the society. Working hand in hand with I Can Fly is our Cathay Changemakers programs. This program aims to recognize outstanding changemakers in their respective field who has brought along positive impact to the society, either on the environmental aspect or the societal aspects. In the I Can Fly program last year, the 3 changemakers worked with our young people to help them understand more about plastic pollution, ethnic minority, and the challenges they face in Hong Kong, and also the food waste problem, not only from the airline industry, but also generally in Hong Kong and globally. So by working closely with our change makers, we hope that our I Can Fly students can also be the future change makers themselves. Besides these 2 programs, another long-standing program we have run for nearly 30 years is our partnership with UNICEF for the Change for Good in-flight donation program. Last year, we collected about 10 million Hong Kong dollar. And since the program launched 30 years ago, nearly 200 million Hong Kong dollar has raised to help support children needs around the world. And I think all these 3 programs, what they have in common is that they all help to address and tackle some really challenging social issues, but working very integrally with who we are as the airline, who our people are, and the way we operate. So I think this is really the key formula we found the success. And when we talk about what we do, primarily, of course, airlines, we carry passengers and cargo around the world. And what we feel is what we found out is that being one of the top 20, the biggest international airlines in the world, what we can make an impact by what we carry, but also what we don't carry. What do I mean by that? We have since about 10 years ago have implemented different embargoes on various items. What we try to do is that by limiting the carriage of endangered species or the products of them, that we could help preserve both those endangered wildlife and also the habitat that they live in. All these embargoes and guidelines are included in our Sustainable Development Cargo Carriage Policy, which was, of course, all our colleagues are familiar, but also we share this with our supply chain partners, whether it's freight forwarders or the cargo handling agents. So we need to make sure that when this policy is not just the paper that we put in place, but in real life when being executed, proper execution and screenings were done to really deter any illegal trafficking or carriage of any goods that we don't intend to carry in our aircraft. But besides what we carry in the aircraft, I think the bigger impact actually lies in operating an international airline itself. Running an airline that with over 200 fleet around the world is not easy, and there are lots of consumptions of different types of natural or man-made resources. And as a result, the emissions or leaving behind and lots of what after used. And this give rise to the remaining two SDGs that we have identified as key for Cathay to work on. The first one is direct consumption. The first one is responsible consumption and production. As an airline, we don't engage in actual production process that much. We are mainly the consumption sort of like body on behalf of our passengers and for the airline operation itself. And this, what you see on the screen are some of the key performance highlights from our 2019 achievements, which I'll detail in the following session. The first major achievement we made last year was the commitment of a single-use plastic reduction target. You may recall from the previous slide that we cut the plastic bottle into half, leaving only 50%. That's the commitment we make, that we aim to reduce our single-use plastic footprint by half by the end of 2022, which means removing nearly 200 million pieces of single-use plastic items from our operations each year, based on our operating scale back in 2018. But what I want to stress is that we didn't just start reducing our plastic footprint last year or the year before. Actually, it goes back all the way for more than 20 years ago, when you see at the very bottom that for all the plastic cutlery, when you fly with us in economy class that you see, and you may think that those are like really good cutlery that is sort of like too wasteful to be thrown away after single use. That I want to tell you, actually, for the past 20 years, this plastic cutlery have been collected, cleaned, sterilized, and reused after each flight. So actually, each of those plastic cutlery would be used a number of times before they finally get too old and need to be replaced. And through the years, there are different initiatives and different ways we have incorporated to further reduce our plastic footprint and to use more sustainable alternative material. Moving forward, since we started the journey back in 2018 with a renewed focus and to apply the 4R strategy to rethink, reduce, reuse, and recycle our single-use plastic, we have since then removed over 30 million pieces of single-use plastic from our annual operation already. So that's sort of like about 15% to our 2022 target, and there are another 85% we are working on at the moment. Besides plastic, it's very important. Is a very important issue, as I think Laura mentioned this morning. But that's not all. What I want to share with you is that what we found important is to incorporate the sustainability idea or the thinking of it in various of our operation. Um, Actually, these slides illustrate everything you can see and touch on when you fly with us, ranging from carpet to blanket to the food you eat or the utensil you use. All of them have some either using recycled material or the material is sustainably sourced, and effort is also made in improving recycling after their use, so as to build in a sustainable idea in the overall customer experience design and also the process of sourcing and procuring that material. It's a true cradle to cradle approach we try to adopt as much as possible. But to be honest, besides responsible consumption, the single biggest sustainability challenge all international airlines facing, including Cathay Pacific, is the SDG 13 around climate change. At Cathay, we approach it from 4 different aspects that you see on the screen here. And let me talk through each of them briefly. Efficiency improvement is one of the key aspects. It mainly around improving fuel efficiency use. Since we track our fuel use in 1998, we've already achieved 20% improvement. And at the industry level, the improvement was made over 80% since the 1960s. That's a really impressive figures. And various ways we try to improve operational efficiency, including the use of electronic flight folder so as to replace heavy menu and to reduce engine use during taxi to improve fuel improvement. Also, the next big initiative is to use biofuel or sustainable alternative fuel, what we call SAF, for use in aviation. Cathay Pacific is one of the first airline investing in Fulcrum bioenergy firm, which produce biofuel for aviation use from municipal solid waste. What do I mean by that? It means the trash that you dump in your trash bin at home, they could be recollected, sorted, and converted and turned into fuel that airline can fly with. By successfully using such biofuel, the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions for aviation could reduce up to 80%. We are looking forward to use the production from Fulcrum in the next 2 years, which their first plant for producing biofuel is expected in 2022. The third aspect which help airlines to improve their climate change impact is the use of new aircraft. For the one you see on the screen is our latest aircraft, Airbus A350-1000 series. This aircraft is 25% more fuel efficient compared with the previous generation. We have taken delivery of over 35 of such new aircraft in the past few years, and 70 more are on firm orders for delivery. And by replacing the old aircraft, this is how airlines mainly improve their carbon emission efficiency. Last but not least, I would like to introduce to all of you, because not just the airline can do to help mitigate climate action, but you, whether as individuals or passengers, you could also help take part by riding on the carbon offset program that we use. What we mean by carbon offset is that with your flight or your road transport or even the food you eat, the beef you eat, there is carbon footprint behind. When you reduce the carbon emission from some other places around the world, then you would net out your impact to the carbon emission to the atmosphere. That's what we call carbon neutral and carbon offset. Since we launched the Fly Greener carbon offset program in 2007, over 160,000 tons of CO2 have been offset, which equals to 30 million taxi journeys when you ride from Hong Kong airport to Central, where I am now. And this is the Fly Greener website. Go search for it, go Google it. The best thing about it is that you can make use of this platform to offset not just your flights, but any carbon emission you have incurred, and we don't profit anything from it. Although we collect your money, all of them will be sent off to the third-party organization running those carbon reduction program, and they are independently audited. And feel free to check it out. So to conclude my presentation, I want to share with you what we've learned along the journey. We'll keep it short because I'm aware that I'm running short of time. I think what we have learned along the way is to really look for the common ground. There are lots of meaningful initiatives under SDGs, but I think what's important is to look for what's relevant and overlaps with your existing business activities, your brand image, your staff composition, your CSR activities. Try to look for those common ground that would give you a good place to start. And I think the second thing we have learned is to identify leverages. I think doing good thing, most people would welcome, even the boss or the people in the boardroom welcome the opportunity to do good. But it's very important for them that we are not doing this just for doing good itself, but there are other combined benefits, whether it's for business growth, positive reputation management, showing leadership in the industry, in encouraging innovation in the company or in the organization itself, engaging stakeholders, cost saving, etc. But try to find those leverages that you can package together with your SDGs initiatives. And last but not least, try to build a solid business case around it. And that's the only way your SDGs initiative won't be a standalone sort of like pet project for yourself, your team, or just a certain executive, but then it become a true part of your business strategy. So with that concludes my presentation today. And to go back to where we start with the 17 SDGs, I hope you'll find something useful from my sharing today for you to start your own SDG journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, thank you, Grace. In fact, you give us a very good example and demonstration how to address SDG, and also where to start and how to start. Yeah, I think you're very good, because in the morning there are a lot of so-called some theory instead of a practical application, and you give us a very good example, a real case example of how to adopt SDG, and then and provide some of very accessible case. And in fact, for you call some kind of very detailed FB material inside the aircraft. Yeah, more than I think you get a lot of very good example. And in fact, personally, I like recycled material. Yeah, frankly speaking, every material, if everything is being recycled using recycled material, it will be very good. Yeah, anyway, thank you. And in fact, in the last week, we have a lesson on the carbon footprint management. The instructor called the case exactly is using the carbon offset. I mean the carbon offset by the passenger. Yeah, her comment is, oh, okay, the price is very cheap compared with the international carbon offset pricing, talking about 6-7 euro per ton, is talking about 6 to 7 euro, and whereas your price for the customer is very cheap. But I find that the absolute figure that can be offset, I mean the result, I'm not sure whether do you satisfy with that amount so far.
I think we can never be satisfied unless it's 100% offset, isn't it? Because no matter how much or how little the offset program has done, if there are still remaining emissions that are not offset, it means it's still a net addition of carbon emission to the atmosphere. So I think it's really a joint effort, not only from Cathay's point of view, but working with our passengers and also across the industry to encourage to take up of carbon offset as one of the way. We are not saying that's the final solution, because offsetting is ultimately, after all, relying on external ways to offset, to net off the emission. So that's why it's a multi-pronged approach we use, that we buy new aircraft to improve fuel efficiency and invest in biofuel company to really help really reduce carbon emission through the airline operation itself.
Do you have any statistic about how many percentage of the customer that they really buy the offset?
I think what I could share is sort of like the industry level.
Yeah.
That what we have done the research is that we have found around 20 airlines, international airlines, would offer their individual carbon offset program. And when we talked to the most successful one among them, who have got the most number of passengers doing the offset, the figure was around 3%. So for every 100 passengers flying, only 3 took up the carbon offset option, and that's already the best performing airline around the world. So that's why I think it's a big job for all of us to do. And I think sharing more, letting more people know about the carbon offset as an option, as sort of like if the program credibly run, like the program we chose, which is audited and managed by independent third party, they are indeed reducing carbon emission in a sort of like real way.
Okay, we have some online question about to ask is how many times on average is the plastic cutlery is used? I mean, is it reused? Yeah.
So I think the question refers to the plastic cutlery for our economy class sort of like meals. And by design, I think the plastic cutleries could be reused up to 7, 8 times or 20 times. But in real life, there are wear and tear, and the actual turnover would be much less, only about 3 to 4 times. Sometimes we find that maybe when you fly with us, you can pay attention to it next time. Some passengers would put their cutlery inside the meal box after they finish the meal. And if they put in the meal box and when the cleaner didn't know, they throw the whole thing away. So they wouldn't open the cover of each of the boxes to check and then collect them out. So there are different ways we've identified to sort of like try to improve the recycle rate further. But each of you can help make some part of it. And some friends of mine, they're very environmental conscious. They always thought that we throw away those plastic cutlery and they always bring them home, so that they could reuse that multiple times. But so that you know that sort of like that's also good as long as you don't throw them in the trash bin. So we encourage that kind of reuse as well.
Okay, that means at least the even though it's plastic, they are durable. Okay, thank you. And another question is about the how was the phase out craft being recycled? How was the phase out airplane recycled?
The aircraft itself. Thanks for asking that question. I'm thinking we have some aviation enthusiastic person out there. So all the aircraft, after they retire from our fleet, they undergo specific sort of like recycler to sort of like take them apart. Useful parts will be resell or reused for sort of like the aircraft maintenance companies for reuse, and the remaining part they will take, let's say, take away the steel of the aircraft or the cables, etc., and recycle the metal. And all the this kind of specialized agents we use are certified by either Airbus, Boeing, and IATA, the sort of like official organizations. And from what I read from our previous program, over 90% of an aircraft actually could be recycled. So that's actually a very efficient recycle process there.
Normally, how long can the aircraft last?
From our planning cycle, they would last at least 20 years. And for some of the older fleet, like the most beloved Boeing 747 aircraft, many airline fans love them. And some of them actually use up to 34 years, although later on they were transferred and turned into cargo planes. But that's just the average for Cathay. And actually each airline would decide the life cycle for their aircraft as long as the maintenance work is done properly and safety check conducted. They could last for, I think some airlines even use it to beyond 40 or even 50 years.
Yeah. You have mentioned about the diversity in your employment. I think it's, to a certain extent, it's quite challenging. How do you manage the diversity workforce in your operation?
I think in our case, it has never been really a real challenge. I think the mix or the nature of Cathay Pacific, since I think the airline was formed nearly over 70 years ago, is quite diversified in nature. We have always have people from around the world because Hong Kong is such a small place. In the past, we need to have maybe a technical people or engineer from overseas or pilots from overseas. Then we have cabin crew coming from all across Asia. And as we expand our network to Europe, to the States, we also have native speaking cabin crew from around the world. So I think inside Cathay, it has always been a diverse culture. And I think what we aim to do is to share our diverse experience and to promote that to other businesses and other employers in Hong Kong, so that the whole society is more diversified and inclusive.
You have mentioned about the application of the biofuel. Do you set any target for application of the biofuel?
I think the biofuel usage, we do study internal targets, and we need to wait and see for the adoption of it. The major concern of the biofuel market is the scale of production. Currently, it's still a very tiny amount of actual production, and the price gap between it and fossil fuel is huge. We're talking about at least 4 or 5 times more expensive. So how do you turn it into a sustainable, competitive market for generating enough demand for more international airlines to use? I think that's the next challenge for biofuel. But we're working with the industry to tackle that.
Maybe you can ask the customer to pay more.
That's actually, don't laugh. That's actually one of the options, and some customers indeed would consider paying more to use biofuel. Just like I think all of us when we go to supermarket, if you're really health conscious, you may not mind paying a bit more for organic food that you know where it's from and you know is better for your health and better for the environment. So all these options we are also studying as well.
Yeah,
I will look forward to your support when we do put it in place, Felix.
Yes, definitely. Because I think if you look, I believe if you're just looking at the extra cost, it doesn't make too much. Yeah, I don't know.
At passenger level, probably sort of like may not be that much.
Okay.
Yeah, but also there are the other. I think the whole supply chain need to work with, let's say, the airport to get the fuel into the systems, or all those are part of the equation. Need to make it happen.
Okay. For this one, I would like to ask is about the COVID-19. How okay would it affect the sustainable development strategy of Cathay Pacific under this kind of challenging situation?
I think at this time, would say actually it's even more important to talk about sustainable development, because sustainable development is not just about environment, but it's also about sustainable economic growth. As we look at the SDG number 8, I think definitely is a time for survival for the airline, that we are now operating only 3% of our previous operating scale and carrying only about 1%. Okay, sorry, less than 1% of the passengers we used to carry a year ago. And it's a really challenging time. But I think the commitment to recover in a sustainable way is very important for the airline industry. That's why we continue to look at what we could do right for replacing our single-use plastic item. So when the volume go back up again, we are still meeting the 50% reduction target, not because the passengers have disappeared, but because we managed to find alternatives and continue to look for ways to improve efficiency so as to limit our climate change impact as well.
Okay, my last question is, I think this question will be quite of the standard question for all the speaker, for the afternoon speaker days. I think we believe to lead the organization change from business as usual to unusual is very challenging. Would you share some of your major challenge and how to deal with this kind of challenge?
I think just like any change management program, to sort of like turn an organization from business as usual to unusual, as you put it, I think a solid sort of like change management approach is very important. And for us, what we call a burning platform, so the whole business, not just the sustainable development team or the environmental affairs department sees that it's important to do the right thing, it's very important. And for us, I don't know whether it's lucky or unlucky as airline, climate change is a very real issue and challenge. Not only looking at the future when the climate started turning really bad with typhoons or operational disruption, but the increasing regulatory requirement, putting both financial burden and also requirements on sort of like company to offset would affect our operation. So all this becomes real business challenge. So go back to the third point in our sort of like lessons learned. It become core to the business strategy. And as the whole company recognize that the whole sustainable development, any of the SDGs, actually closely related to the survival of the company, the future development and prospect of the company. I think that's where you could really see a complete change of approach to take it on.
I believe all the audience here are waiting for the resume of the airline, yeah, and take Cathay Pacific again. Thank you.
Thank you. We look
Thank
forward
you,
to that
Grace.
as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for
everyone.
coming. Thank you.